This is TWiT.
So school, like everything, has moved almost entirely online in recent months. Every aspect of schooling carries technical challenges that must be met in a fair and balanced way. So then, how are students held to a higher standard when they're doing things like taking exams, testing online? Pretty difficult challenge there. And joining us to talk about remote test proctoring in the age of the coronavirus is Monica Chin from The Verge. Welcome to the show, Monica.
Hi. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's great to get you here. Thank you for taking some time for us. So let's kind of start with the basics first and foremost. What is proctoring? Why is it necessary? Is this the kind of thing this is the kind of thing that we'd see in a normal school, but much differently than what we're seeing now. What is it?
Yeah. So, online classes didn't start with coronavirus. They've been a thing for as long as the internet has existed. But certainly there's been a big uptick in online instruction since schools have all had to move their classes online. So essentially, when you have these online classes and you don't have a physical space where they take place, a lot of teachers are assigning tests and exams, and they're concerned about students cheating. And so one thing that some schools are doing to try to prevent cheating is they signed up for some of these online, virtual proctoring services. So there's a bunch of them. There's ProctorU, there's ProctorTrack. The one that I looked at today is one of the biggest and one of the fastest growing ones, and it's called Examity. And so the way it works is you download Zoom or you download one of these other chatting service, like virtual chatting services on your computer. I think GoToMeeting is another one. And then you video chat with a virtual proctor who is, somewhere in India or, one of these other places where the customer service stuff is outsourced to. And then they watch you take your test through your webcam. And, you have to stand up, you have to show them your whole room, so that they note you're not like hiding cheat notes on your desk, or you don't have like someone to the side whispering you the answers. And, then they watch your face, they watch your eyes for like suspicious eye movements. They watch your surroundings to make sure that someone's not coming in the background. They're watching you very closely. And then at the end, at least in some of these cases, the proctor you're actually required to give the proctor remote access to your computer. And the proctor then, has to enter a password to certify that you completed the test, and then submits it for you. So this is a thing that a lot of students find really creepy. And, I'm sure that some students are fine with it, but certainly some students are not. So that's what we were looking at in this article.
Well, I think I look back on my time, at university and everything. And when you're taking a major exam, like you're in a room, it's not just you, it's a bunch of other students who are also taking the exam. And you might have one or two instructors or teachers making sure that you're following the rules, that you're not breaking the rules. This almost feels like they're right up in your face, as one person's attention directly applied to one person, and not just attention. I mean, it's access to everything. That is very creepy. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And that's one thing, a lot of people ask, and this is a question I had at the beginning. I was like, well, when you take a test in person, someone's watching you too. What's the difference? I think for a lot of the students I talk to, a big difference is it's not someone, it's not your professor. It's not your TA. It's a random person. You don't know who it is. You don't necessarily know that they're not going to try to snoop. And, I'm sure that many of these proctors are not malicious actors, but I think it's reasonable for some students to be worried. Well, what if it's hijacked? What if there's a data breach? There's definitely a lot more to be anxious about than there is if it's just your professor watching you in a classroom.
Yeah, no kidding. So, and then of course now, the necessity around this sort of approach, this service, I suppose, is heightened with COVID-19. So many more, students are at home taking tests and needing to do so legitimately in the eyes of the university or the school or whatever. So I imagine this is placing, a lot of impact on these companies and on students who have never had to experience this before. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we talked the CEO of Examity, and he said they've seen a lot more demand for their service. I talked to some Examity proctors as well, and they said they've been working more hours and they have a lot more cases. So, it's definitely something that more places are adopting, that more professors are trying out, as more of this stuff has to go online for sure.
Yeah. Are all proctoring, like online proctoring services, the same as far as what they require? Do some require more invasive access than others? How are there even a lot of proctoring services, or is it pretty limited? I mean, imagine if it's been around since the beginning of the internet, that there's probably a lot of competition. But do they run things differently, or are there standards that they're held by?
There are a bunch of different ones. Examity is one of the biggest ones, and it was named one of the biggest, fastest growing ed tech companies in the past couple of years. But there are definitely a lot of other ones. One that I had to use in college is called Turnitin. It's not nearly as, there's no video chatting element with it, but you have to, when you submit your paper, it goes through your paper and, looks at every phrase and like cross-references it with the internet, and then alerts the professor if it thinks you cheated. So that, there's that I would say is one of the less invasive ones, and then going all the way up to this. But there, like I said, there are automated, there are AI solutions where there's not a physical proctor involved. And then of course there are those with physical proctors as well. Even within Examity though, there are different tiers depending on what the professor wants. So there are offerings where there's not a proctor involved, where it's all virtual. And then there are offerings where the proctor's involved. So it's, I think a lot of these companies do, try to be flexible and offer different plans for what the professor wants, for sure. But I did talk to a number of students who had to use this, what I would say is the most invasive option, which is the proctor watching over the webcam. One of the students I talked to called it the nuclear option. If the cheating and trying to catch the cheaters is like an arms race. But yeah, I mean, definitely not all services are the same, and they're going to be, professors are going to use different ones depending on their expectations.
Yeah, what their needs are and everything. How effective are they in catching cheating? Because I mean, covering all those bases and watching eye twitch movements and everything, man, it just sounds kind of crazy. But I wonder, and maybe it's impossible to know whether they've been effectively cheated on or not. But are they effective at catching cheating?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's kind of hard to know because, I'm not sure that they would necessarily know if a cheater had gotten away with cheating. But, in the course of researching this article, I definitely did encounter students who said that they had successfully cheated it. And I talked to others, none of the students I talked to, admitted to having cheated, but most of them thought, yeah, there are definitely ways. There were some Reddit threads that are pretty funny that have just all these different people listing all these ways that they either had, cheated one of these services or thought that you could. People were like taping iPads to their monitors and like drawing on the inside of phone cases and, just doing all that. I mean, it's really interesting just the lengths to which these people will go to cheat, and I think that's, it's actually, I think it's kind of interesting, you have these students who really want to cheat, who come up with all these innovative new ways to cheat. And so in response, these companies put out the software that's more and more invasive. And in response, the cheaters innovate again and try new things to cheat. And, it really is just this cycle where, you just keep the cheaters versus the software, does anyone really win, or does privacy just lose,
Yeah, totally. Like you said, an arms race, that's a perfect way to put it. And it will probably always be that way because let's be real, there are a lot of people out there who just don't want to study or maybe, exactly. Feel like cheating is their only option or whatever.
And they put more work. They put more work into the cheating than if they would have just studied. Usually is how that ends up happening.
Well, and you kind of get the sense from looking at some of these Reddit threads that, not only is it they don't want to study, but that it's kind of a point of pride for them. They're thinking, look, these people thought they could catch cheating, but they can't because I beat them, So it seems like, some of these people are going to find ways to cheat no matter what you do.
Is there a better way to do a service like this without kind of like the invasive qualities of it? Because especially, I mean, right now, in particular, the past few years, we as a society, a technologically adept society, have become more and more I don't know, concerned with surveillance. And I mean, just take a look at today's show. Like there are a number of stories in today's rundown that have to do with surveillance is very top of mind. Is there a way to do this proctoring that isn't quite so surveillance heavy, or is that just kind of part of the game? I don't know how you do it otherwise.
Yeah, you know, one thing I think is really interesting, not just about Examity in general, but kind of about the online, the whole online education thing as a whole, is I think it kind of illustrates the limitations of multiple choice tests as a tool, as an evaluative tool, you know, because I think it shows not only is it kind of difficult to keep students from cheating when they're not sitting right in front of you, but, you know, it kind of just shows how, you know, maybe having your grade decided by something that's really easily Googleable isn't the best way to do this at all. And, you know, one professor I spoke to, I asked, like, you know, do you use Examity for online classes? And she said, no, I just try to set up a scenario where students are less likely to cheat. You know, there's so many other options for a lot of classes. There are things like group projects or solo projects and papers, you know, and it's not like you can't cheat on those, but it's certainly, you know, it's a lot harder to cheat on something that's not a multiple choice test, even like a short answer test, than it is to just where you can just Google the answer. So I think that, you know, if a class can do something like that instead, you know, not only do you not have to use these invasive tools, but, you know, I think in many ways it's probably a better evaluation of how well the student understands the material, because it's not the type of thing that you can just look up.
Yeah, right. Yep. That makes a lot of sense.